started recording. That should hopefully warn people that that is happening. There we go. So this is our EcoTeach Meet webinar on school grounds. So just a very quick sort of introduction for those that haven't joined us before. Bit of an overview of the format and how things work. So our webinars run every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. And as I've said before, they do get recorded. So we're going to give you a very quick overview about environmental education, EcoSchools, how it fits in with the big picture, some projects all around school grounds, and what we've done is taken a little bit of a flavour of lots of different things, questions and answers, and then some opportunities coming up as well. So like I say, they're generally Leicester focused, but lots of other examples from other places, not just in Leicester, so it gives you an idea of kind of what's happening nationwide. Mention that we're recording them and they'll go up on the school's extranet after this webinar finishes, usually during the afternoon, but Amy and I have got some training today, so it might be this evening. During the presentation, if you've got any questions, there is a chat box option. So if you hover over the little bar in the middle, there's one that's called chat or show conversation. And on there, people can kind of introduce themselves, or if they've got questions going along, by all means, just pop them down in there and we'll answer them later on. And then towards the end, we'll take any more questions, and if people want to ask those, we'll try and answer them between us. Okay. So very briefly, environmental education in Leicester. So we provide support to all Leicester schools. We have lots of communications through newsletters, social media, and our e-bulletins. During the year, we run teach meets, roadshows. We have our annual celebration event, and we do a sustainable schools evening event every 2 years. Focusing on the Eco School Award, and very much what Amy and I tend to focus on is energy and litter, but for everyone else, we tend to work on providing information to other people on other projects that are available, kind of through partners, either through the council or through external partners, very much about kind of what Sam and Matthew will be talking a bit about later today. Just a few pictures there from our Eco School Roadshow, which I'm sure a few of you have seen now or been involved in. And some photos there from our celebration events that we do annually as well. So that gives a real chance for children to sort of showcase what they've been up to and projects that they've been involved in. In terms of EcoSchools, we now have 109 registered on the programme, and we've got 48 green flag schools. So this graph just gives you a bit of an overview of how we've done over the last few years. And we are number 2 in England at the moment. Hopefully by the end of this term, we'll be number 1 for green flags. So that's really good. Eco School model, 7 steps. And what we're going to do, so in the very first webinar, we went through these in a bit more detail. So just very briefly, just telling you a little bit about how each steps links in with school grounds. So with your committee, that can be any group of children in school. It might be you've got a subcommittee that are the forest school group or the outdoor learning group, as long as they feed into the big eco team. When you do the environmental review, one of the areas that you do have to cover is school grounds. And that's quite useful for getting an idea of what's already in school and what things you maybe want to improve. It gives you some suggestions and ideas. And for those that haven't seen them, there's an early years, a primary and a secondary version. And they're quite useful for having a look at some of the ideas that you might want to do. In developing your action plan, so obviously if you're looking at school grounds tends to be one of the main topics that a lot of schools do. And this just gives you a bit of information around what you might want to plan. So when you're going for your first green flag, it's 3 topics. And quite often you find that school grounds fits into several topics. So you might be doing something to do with wildlife, which would be biodiversity. You might be doing something about litter, which again links to school grounds. So lots of crossover. Curriculum links, obviously school grounds, forest schools, outdoor learning, much more kind of clearly linked than what it used to be. So you find that actually school grounds enhances your curriculum really well. And it's not a case of recreating things for the sake of it. It's more looking at what you're already teaching and where EcoSchools covers outdoor learning activities. Informing and involving. So again, school grounds is a great topic for inviting in parents, community, volunteer days, practical opportunities around maybe painting fences, planting, tree planting, food growing, lots of different opportunities there. And then monitoring. Monitoring one, I guess, for the school ground is a little bit more difficult, but it might be around doing surveys, or it might be around counting things, or if you are linking it to biodiversity, it might be a measure of how many different species, or things like the Big Bird Watch, which you'd obviously be using your own school grounds for. And then the eco code, so linking that again to your school grounds, it might be about putting in a line around how you would use the school grounds or how you'd look after them, and lots of other opportunities as well. So in terms of EcoSchools, for those that are not aware, there's 10 topics, and these are the 10. And as you can see, school grounds kind of sits in the middle of all this, and quite closely biodiversity and healthy living and marine and litter all fit in very closely into this topic. So again, there's a lot of crossover. So things to think about during the topics. So whole school opportunities are always good, especially for outdoor learning. Informing everyone about what you're doing. We'll do a little bit more talking about curriculum links, but there's lots of links to do with school grounds. In fact, every topic I think you can. Monitoring the impact, like I say, sometimes a bit more difficult with school grounds, but photos before and after projects work really well, and also surveys, so asking people about what they think. And obviously reflecting that in your eco code is obviously very important. So we've got a long list of school ground projects today that we're going to sort of whistle our way through. Some are national campaigns, some are Leicester focused, some are organisations that are based in Leicester, and hopefully it'll give you a little bit of a flavour and something new that you're not already aware of. Okay. Can I just get Sam and Matthew? Are you on the line at the moment?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent.
Yes, I'm here.
Right. I just thought I might unmute you at the moment, just so if you want to introduce yourself. Matthew, do you want to just introduce yourself, if that's all right?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Matthew from Leicester and Rutland Wildlife Trust. I work specifically on the Grow Wild project of the trust, which does most of its work in schools.
Brilliant, thank you. And Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm from the Conservation Volunteers, and my main work with schools is through the Community Food Growing Support Network programme, which is funded by Public Health at the council. So I work very closely with Lee and with Lisa from Food for Life around different projects around food growing, and also the Meal in the Barrow competition, the pumpkin competition that we're running. And I just try and give people as much help and advice as possible to get them into growing food.
Brilliant, thank you, Sam. And hopefully Amy's back with us at the moment. I'm just going to double check before I then pass over to her and there's a deadly silence.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, brilliant, right, and we have an Amy as well. Amy's internet's a little bit slow this morning, so I think you don't get her pretty face, you just get the sound, I'm afraid, from Amy this morning. Right, excellent, okay. So what we'll do is we'll start off with some of these projects, and then if people have got questions, by all means ask through the chat box as we're going along, and I'll try and dip into those as we go through. But otherwise, kind of by all means, take a note of your questions, and we'll take them kind of towards the end as well. Lovely. Right. Let me just set up so I can see that people are chatting at the same time.
Lee, can I just say I don't have access to the chat box? I'm not a member. I don't know what that means.
Okay. That's interesting. So you can't see the conversation bit?
No, when I hover over it, it says only team members can chat. Ask the team owner to make you a member.
Oh.
I know.
Interesting. I'm not sure about that one.
I've never been on Teams before, so I'm no help at all.
Oh, okay, no problem. Might have to just get you to interrupt at some point if you've got any questions there, Hannah.
That will be no problem at all.
Right, brilliant. Okay, so if we go on to edible playgrounds, so edible playground. I'm going to check if it is me or Amy with this one. We made a list. No, this is me. That's okay.
It's you.
Excellent. We've got a couple of people whose chat boxes aren't working for some reason. We'll have a look into that. But again, if people have got questions sort of between slides, either sort of just shout up or we'll take them at the end. So Edible Playgrounds is a project run by Trees for Cities. As they say, they're a lively, engaging, multisensory way to teach children about growing. So they're a national organisation. They have various streams of projects that they run through. But very much Trees for Cities is about sort of focusing on green spaces in inner city areas, of which obviously Leicester is one. Their sort of flagship project they're working on at the moment is called Edible Playgrounds, and as you can see from the photos, it is about creating urban space, growing areas. So they've been working with Leicester for the last sort of 6 months, and they are working with 3 schools in Leicester around creating edible playgrounds, and then working with kind of the teachers and the school staff on that around using those spaces. And I believe the Wildlife Trust, Matthew, are creating these areas for edible playgrounds.
We've just, well, I say we've done 4 in Nottingham, we've done 3 in Nottingham, and then had to stop because of the lockdown. We hope to be doing ones in Leicester, although that's not confirmed at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
It's likely, but not definite.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And then we've had conversations with Edible Playground around next year, and they've also got opportunities for working with more schools next year. So if there's a project you might be interested in, just drop me an email, and we can take it from there. But it's very much around kind of a standard design, which then fits into the space that the school's got. So it's an additional project, I guess. The Woodland Trust, as I'm sure a lot of you know, do Trees for Schools. And these are for schools and for community groups. They do 2 delivery slots a year. So the next one's in November, which may seem a very long time away, but it's worth sort of thinking about it now if you do want to do tree planting later on in this academic year. For schools, they should either be planted in the school grounds or on land that you've got regular access to, so that it can be looked after. And there's various different size packs that you can order, up to 420, but it's worth looking at that and just sort of being realistic about what spaces you've got and how they can be looked after. And obviously maintenance is a big issue with things like trees. A lot of people plant them and then forget they do need watering when they're young. So that's again something just to sort of think about. But again, Woodland Trust offer free trees, and they do have a woodlands officer who can come and support with some of those logistics and some of those ideas, and it's always something we're interested in kind of working with schools on. And lots of resources from the Woodland Trust. So again, just have a look online, see what they've got, but there's lots of sort of downloadable resources and activities that the Woodland Trust produce. Amy, I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, so the next one is Outdoor Classroom Days. It's a global campaign to celebrate outdoor learning and all the benefits that it provides. Last year, over 3 million children were involved across 100 countries. So it's quite a big thing. The next days are the 21st of May, so in a couple of weeks' time. It will probably look a bit different to how it normally would, but it's just about encouraging people to get outside and have a day outside learning. You can also do this at home if you're a parent looking after kids as well. And there's a link down the bottom so you can sign up. And the theme for this year is Playful Nature.
Well, thank you. And then we've got the Wild Forest School. Matthew, would you be able to talk about this one? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. So Leicester and Rutland Wildlife Trust does a range of projects under the banner of its education team, one of which is Wild Forest Schools, which has been running for almost 5 years now with funding from the People's Postcode Lottery. It does a wide variety of things, but I suppose the relevant thing for the folk on this call is that it offers some forest school sessions to 2 or 3 different schools every year. And that's either forest school sessions on the school grounds, if there's a suitable site on the school grounds, or it's forest school sessions at one of the sites that the Trust regularly uses, which are Lucas Marsh, which is a nature reserve just down near Brox Hill in Opie, or Knighton Spinney at Knighton Park, or Attenborough Arboretum, sort of the bottom of Carrisbrook Road near Oakdale School. So there's those 3 sites. So we can either do it at your site or take your kids to one of these outdoor sites. And it's a wide variety of activities. You can sort of see some things in the pictures, craft activities, some bushcraft, nature-related education activities. And there's also other groups that aren't specifically school-related. There's groups for home-educated families. There's groups for preschool kids. And I should probably say at this stage that the education team have been producing videos and collating other resources so that kids can carry on doing forest school related stuff in the lockdown. And I will put the link to that in a moment in the chat, so that you can do that now. There's a wild activities page of the Wild Forest School website. So there's materials out there now that you can either be networking out to your kids that are at home or using in the future. Yeah.
Well, okay, thank you.
So the other thing that the Wild Forest School Project does is most years runs a competition of some kind. Obviously, the current competition, which is the Wild Arts competition, has kind of been interrupted by the COVID-19 situation. I'm not quite sure where that will pick up, but there's a link in these slides, which you can look at afterwards. But I just put a couple of pictures on the slide of some work that's done at Holy Cross Primary after the Wild Stories competition. So there's a storytelling competition. Kids were asked to write nature-based, wildlife-themed stories. That was judged by a small panel, Lee, myself, someone from BBC Leicester, from the Mercury, and the top prize was actually the creation of a storytelling garden in the school. And you can see the pictures here. There's an outdoor classroom storytelling space with a storytelling chair, and you can't see full details of the garden, but there was the area around it was developed as well into a more accessible, usable space than was previously there. So that's the kind of thing. I think the prize for the Wild Art competition is a wildlife-themed graffiti mural in school somewhere. Yeah, do you want to move on, Peter?
Yeah, I think this video might play, Matthew. Let me just try.
Okay.
And if not, we will move on. But usually this sort of playing.
There we are.
Sometimes the audio works, sometimes it doesn't. We'll just give it a second.
This short story writing competition was part of our Wild Forest School project, which is generously supported by Players People's Postcode Lottery. Wild Forest School is all about getting Leicester City kids outside and connecting with the natural world. Phoebe's story was chosen because it has a strong wildlife theme, being based on the day in the life of a squirrel called Scampy who lives in her garden. It was different from the other stories because she placed herself in the story, meaning that it sounded like she was writing about real experiences of enjoying wildlife in her garden. And the story speaks of a real appreciation of wildlife and nature.
Good morning again, everyone, and welcome to the opening ceremony of this storytelling garden or area. I'm Martha from Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust, and it's wonderful to be with you today. A little something to feed yourself. We've got you a little something, and I'd like to give it to you on behalf of all of your friends at Christ the King and all of the staff and teachers here to say thank you for this wonderful gift that we've had on behalf of your incredible talent as a writer. Well done.
Here at Christ the King, it's really important to us to foster that love of nature and the environment and wildlife protection. We know that if we can instill this in our children, that they are the future in protecting and conserving wildlife, for generations to come.
This new storytelling area is a great place for outdoor literacy lessons where children can come, write, perform, listen to plays, poetry and stories. I really hope that the children enjoy having their lessons outdoors and find it an inspiring place for their creative work.
Yeah, excellent.
So I'll just put another link up in the chat, which is a link to some outdoor literacy and numeracy information. But moving on to the wild areas, the team I'm involved in, the Grow Wild team of the Trust, does the actual physical creation, design and creation of spaces in schools, including the one at Christ the King that you just saw, the outdoor classroom and the areas around it. And these are just a few photos of the kind of things that we've done over recent years. So we've got forest schools areas, we've got some play features using old reclaimed materials like the bus that you can see there, water features, outdoor classrooms, we've got raised beds built on otherwise, quite sterile areas, just slabbed areas, ponds, and the raised beds for a variety of things. These raised beds you can see on this particular slide were built and filled with pollinator-friendly planting. So an area that had year-round flowers, which obviously the kids could enjoy, but they could also be used for study because you've got pollinators coming in and out. They support wildlife, all kinds of things. So that's the kind of areas, and there's some more on the next slide, please, Nick.
Yeah.
So again, a variety of different types of area that can be created. You've got a living willow tunnel there at Falcons Primary. You've got a little pollinator garden, water feature, and some raised beds. Down at the bottom there, with a little round table, and that's actually a science area that was created in the school with sort of a bank of seating and outdoor whiteboard and study tables. And next door to that, you can't see there was a wildlife area with mini beast hunting area and a wildlife pond, and you've got a little image of a wildlife pond there. So the kind of projects that we get asked to do are quite varied. There's a little list there, but it's not exhaustive. So wildlife areas, sensory gardens, barefoot sensory trails, outdoor classrooms. Those can be quite basic, from a log seating circle underneath the shade sail to the kind of timber structure you saw in the video. Forest schools areas, mindfulness gardens, ponds, hedges, and for schools that don't have much outdoor green space, or indeed any outdoor green space, we've worked with them to create spaces on roofs, to build raised beds into all those little nooks and crannies that they otherwise can't use. Behind the gate there that the parents come in the morning, there's usually space in the corner for a little raised bed, or there's space for hanging baskets, or green walls, green roofs. We'd really like to encourage any school, even those that are thinking that they are just far too urban, to talk to us about creating green spaces. The tops of walls, all kinds of spaces can be used for small areas, little pockets of nature, so the kids can still interact with the natural world, even though the school grounds don't have acres of grass or room for a living willow tunnel. And there's things like the little mini beast feature you can see on the top, in the top bubble, centre bubble. That's just a little mini beast feature. If you can see the bigger picture of that, that's actually tucked in an alcove in a wall in an old Victorian school. No actual grass or green space, just the school and a bit of concrete and a bit of tarmac. But we can still create spaces. We put bird boxes up on some of the old schools. Swift boxes to support the swift population. All kinds of things you can do. So it's really just limited by our imaginations, really. And things like wildlife hedges. You saw the link to the Woodland Trust. You can get free trees, you can plant a hedge, and that becomes an instant wildlife corridor. Not only do you get the screening that it provides, so you get a certain amount of safeguarding from a wildlife hedge, but it becomes a corridor. The invertebrates live and feed on the hedging plants. The small mammals, even the larger mammals like foxes, will use the hedgerow as a way of travelling safely undercover. All kinds of things. So they're really, really great resources for wildlife. Okay, I've probably spoken enough about that. Next, please.
Yeah.
These are just a few of the designs we've created over the last few years for schools. Very, very different designs, from quite urban to quite schools with quite big green spaces. So we've got mixtures of outdoor learning zones, reflection gardens, wildlife ponds. We've got an area at the bottom right there at Taylor Road Primary, which is an otherwise underused area of the school that was just astroturfed, that's now been turned into a nature garden. So again, anything is possible. And Grow Wild work very, very closely with Lee, so that we can provide you with these designs, come and do the work for you, and Lee will support you to get the fundraising in place to get the work done. Unfortunately, we're a self-funded project of the Wildlife Trust, so we can't bring money with us unless it's through something like one of the competition prizes. So we do charge, but we are a not-for-profit, so I think we're very reasonable. And in almost all cases, grants are found to cover our costs anyway, so it doesn't usually cost the school anything.
Yeah.
And obviously, if there are questions about any of that, please come back to me at the end. And I suspect there's just one more slide, which for some reason, which is my opening line.
Ah, yes. Sorry, Matthew. Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably enough from me for now. You've got time to ask questions, either in the chat or at the end. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Matthew. Brilliant. Right, I'm just going to see if this one will load. I can't remember if this was a click or an automatic play. I get a bit eager with clicking too quickly sometimes. So I'll just give that a second just to load. Or I think, is this the one from Mella Primary? Yeah.
Yeah, it's from a few years ago.
Right, let's play this one. And just be aware, sometimes you can hear speaking. If you've got one headset, you can only sometimes hear the music. So don't panic if you can't see and hear everything. I'll give you an idea. There we go. We've had a couple of questions, but we'll pick them up towards the end if that's okay. Amy, over to you then. EcoSchools at home.
Sure. So EcoSchools every Tuesday at 8 p.m. are publishing a new handout on the topics, so the 10 topics in total. And quite fortuitously, they've heard about our webinars, so they released the school grounds one last night. So in there is some activities to do with trees and lichens and mosses and how to make some garden designs. And on that slide, there are all the links to the previous ones as well. So that's every Tuesday at 8 p.m.
Excellent. And then some Pinterest as well, Amy?
Yep, so I started looking at things to include in this webinar and got lost in the EcoSchools Pinterest pages if you haven't found them already. And there's just a lot of ideas there across all the topics, and there's just a few ideas there. And if you click on any of those, it will take you to the project. So you've got a mud kitchen design in there. The one on the left is a wall planter made out of plastic bottles. And then you've got games like the Ladybird tic-tac-toe up the top and how to make a sensory pass. There's lots and lots of ideas on there.
Amazing. I like the grow your own teepee actually. That looks a great idea, growing beans and things up. Very cool. Excellent. And then what we've got is Grow Wild. So if people aren't aware, Grow Wild is an outreach initiative by the Botanical Gardens at Kew. They've been going for a number of years. They're funded through National Lottery. But they've currently got grants for £500 for creative projects, and again that's aimed at secondary students generally, so 14 to 25, so right up to sort of college and university. The deadline for this year's funding's passed, but it's kind of an ongoing thing. So again, there's a link there to some information about perhaps being a creative project. You're out using outdoor school grounds, kind of in a creative way. The Royal Horticultural Society, RHS, is another wealth of resources. So they have lots and lots of different activities kind of available for schools. They run various projects that schools can join in, like the Big Soup Share and the Green Planet. So Green Planet ran in Leicester about 2 years ago, and that's about getting secondary students to think about designing a space in school, and then they work with a professional landscape designer. And they create kind of a model, and then that's presented back to judges. And a couple of years ago that happened at the Botanical Gardens, and I know they're quite keen to do that again next year. So that's with secondary students. They also do the school gardening awards up to 5 different levels, and at each level you kind of get a prize basically. So again, it's kind of getting involvement and a structure if you want to do something like that. But again, lots of resources, lots of training courses available, both sort of nationally but also locally. They support schools within RHS. Learning Through Landscapes is another national charity, and they do lots of work with schools. Kind of the one that I've just picked out is the local school grants that they offer up to £500 of equipment for schools. So I know quite a few schools in Leicester have applied and been successful. So there's a catalogue of equipment that ranges from £30 right up to the full 500. A training course delivered in school, and key thing about it is involving your students, whether that's the eco team or a school council or a class of children, and they have to be involved in selecting the equipment and the course and thinking about their own school and why that's important. That's currently just on hold, but they have got a rolling programme of that, so that'll reopen, I imagine, in the autumn. So that's the local school grants. And Learning Through Landscape also coordinate the International Schools Conference. So that is happening now in September 2021. So that's obviously quite a long way off, but that's a 3-day event up in Stirling. They are offering subsidised courses at the moment through the one of the European funded projects. So again, that might be something if you're interested in sort of taking 3 days with plenty of notice, going up to have a look at that. So that's something else for you to maybe think about kind of more long term. And then Forest School Network. So in Leicester and East Midlands, we have a Forest School Network, which is a group of teachers, practitioners and people working around forming outdoor learning opportunities. So they've been going for a number of years. They support staff through CPD, and all very reasonably priced. So I've done a couple of these courses that were really good. And they usually do an annual sort of get-together conference, which moves around kind of the East Midlands. So I know a couple of years ago it was in Leicester. So again, it's worth just having a look on their Facebook group. There's a mailing list that comes out, and it gives you lots of opportunities about either doing the full level 3 forest school, but also kind of like half days, couple of hours, opportunities to sort of dipping in. So if it's something you're interested in either personally or as a school, Forest School Network's worth just getting a bit of information about how that works. Wilko's project. So last academic year, Wilko's funded an officer to work with some of our schools, so the 5 primaries and Ellesmere School there you can see. I've been worked with them for over a year on developing some outdoor learning packs. So the schools were really successful in developing their outdoor school grounds, and they found some real good opportunities. So again, they've received funding for their EcoSchool Award. So those 5 schools either have or are working towards getting their green flag this term. And it just gives you a bit of an idea of some of the projects that they were involved in. So there's a few more pictures there. So each of the schools looked at where they wanted to improve their school grounds, and they either had volunteers that came in or parents, or again, I think Matthew, the Wildlife Trust, did some work with them as well. So that's another area that you're sort of thinking about, could be an opportunity. So I'm sure these 5 schools will be open for any visits if you wanted to go and find out a bit more about what they were doing, how they did things. And you can see there sort of before and after pictures, some of the sort of the amazing work that happened with those schools. And then Grow Your Own Grub. Sam, can I pass it over to you for doing Grow Your Own Grub and Pumpkin? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. So the Grow Your Own Grub competition, it has various parts to it. It's on hold this year because of the situation. But generally, this is the meal in the barrow, where the schools come and collect a barrow and compost and are given a bit of training, and then you grow a meal in the barrow. So you have to create a menu which has, I think, is it 5 ingredients?
Yeah.
In your menu, 5 ingredients in your menu. They don't have to be ready all at the same time, and you don't have to cook your menu. So the competition is judged on the menu, the barrow. There's some sustainability factors in there, and then we also come and look at the school grounds. So unfortunately this year we've had to postpone that, although some of the schools will have already collected their barrows and compost, so you are still very welcome to grow in your barrows this year. And you know, I'm sure we'd love to see some photos of what you've grown if you are doing that with any of the children that are still in school, but it's not being run as a competition. But what we are doing as a competition is still the pumpkin gardens. So this came out of some work last year where we were looking around October time at composting pumpkins and how much pumpkins go to waste. So we were trying to encourage people last year to use their pumpkins to actually cook them, to make recipes out of pumpkins, and then also to compost the pumpkins. And so this year we brought in a new competition for schools to create a pumpkin garden. Obviously pumpkins can take up quite a bit of space, but you can also grow them in a smaller space if you grow them upwards rather than outwards. So I think there's about 11 schools that are participating so far. So they've received now a little video on planting the seeds, some seeds to grow, and some other resources around growing their pumpkins. And then that will be done as a photographic competition. So schools will be sending in the pictures of the pumpkin gardens and they will be judged. And have I forgotten anything, Lee, about that?
No, I don't think so, no.
Again, there'll be links to the sort of the composting, the cooking of your pumpkins later on, or wildlife features that you can create out of your pumpkin shells using your pumpkin seeds and so on and so forth.
Cool. I thought I'd put some more pictures in. Maybe I've hidden them somewhere. I'm just going to scroll back. Yeah, I must have moved them. Never mind.
Yes.
Okay.
So people have basically signed up for that. But you can see the video if you want to grow pumpkins. There is a video which I think is on the Leicester Food Growing page. So if you haven't joined the Leicester Food Growing group, there's lots and lots of different resources on there, not just about pumpkins, but about growing all sorts of things and all sorts of tips. So do join us on the Leicester Food Growing group, because there's always updates on what you should be doing now and little hints and tips and things.
And then I'll let you go on to community food support, Sam.
Yes, so the community food support programme is funded by Public Health. It's been running, this is its 3rd year now, and it works with schools, but also with community groups, allotments, and anybody else who's coming into food growing. So again, obviously some of the offering has been changed a little bit because of the situation, but generally I would go around and talk to people about setting up or maintaining a food garden. I might be running sessions in schools for either small groups or for whole classes in different aspects of food gardening. So that would go right through from seed sowing, how to pot things on, how to take cuttings, how to save seed, thinking about harvesting your food, thinking about preserving it even. And a lot of that can be integrated into your biodiversity work. So we can look at things like soil health. So we can look at the biodiversity within the soil as well as what's going on above the soil. How to encourage things like companion planting in your food garden, so you get all your pollinators into your food garden. If you're thinking about sort of some monitoring and evaluation side of things, obviously we can look at sessions where you look at your yield from your food garden as well. So there's lots of different ways that I can adapt sessions around different ages of children or around the different things that you're trying to achieve through EcoSchools. Another element of that, and I don't quite know where this is going to go post-COVID, is that we've been trying to encourage schools and school grounds to become more open to the community. And so we've been working with Food for Life. Food for Life run a programme called Grandparents Gardening Week, which isn't just for grandparents, but allows community to come in and work on school gardens. So I run sessions linked up with Food for Life, but also I can run intergenerational sessions outside of sort of Grandparents Gardening Week, where we get the community to come in and work with the school on creating or working on a food growing area. And I'll say a bit more about how that links in with some of the TCV projects in a minute. So there's a kind of wide variety of kind of sessions that I can run directly with groups, either pupils or the community. I also offer inset training for teachers. So where you're trying to do your curriculum links and you want to use food growing as part of your curriculum links, rather than working directly with the pupils, I can also come in and do sessions with teachers. And we can also work into that, things like going a bit deeper with the sustainability around your food garden. So thinking about things like going peat free, why not have peat compost, thinking about things like the differences between organic growing and no dig gardening, and those kind of things that are kind of aimed at maybe more older pupils or actually at the teachers, to get them thinking about those kind of issues. And I can't actually see what's on my slide because the bar is across it. About the Get Growing grants. Yes, so there are still Get Growing grants available. So these are fairly small grants that are available directly from Leicester City Council to help people get into food growing. But they will help you with things like the cost of seeds or the cost of a bit of compost to get going with your growing. And they are managed by Public Health. But I'm happy to talk through with people if they want to put in a Get Growing grant, what kind of things would be most useful for them to put in for. And I can also give kind of wider funding advice as well. So I've been working with some schools on things like awards for all grants as well, particularly around food growing, sort of similar to the kind of thing Lee does specifically for biodiversity. But we can also look at integrating in some food growing into those. I think there's another slide, Lee. Yeah. Yes. So the other thing that the conservation volunteers does is it runs these things called green gyms, which are not the equipment out on parks where you go for on a machine. It's just about bringing community into green space together for health and well-being, to reduce social isolation, etc. We have a green gym already at Rollston Primary up in Ayers Monsell, which runs on a Thursday morning and a Saturday, obviously not right now, but generally. So the way that works is that the Thursday morning session is an adults only session. So the idea was that parents would come to the school to drop drop off their children and then be able to come out into the garden themselves and feel a bit healthier and a bit more included by doing some food gardening. And then we also run a Saturday session, which is a family session, so adults and children working together. And the garden has become very productive. People have had a great time doing that. And this is a model that we're looking at extending across more of the city and having more schools get involved with, is having green gym sessions. And then Hannah can tell you more about this, but we've also been doing a bit of support. So Mayflower are setting up a couple of allotment plots on hilltop allotments. So actually expanding outside of the school grounds and doing some things beyond that. So we've been trying to support that wherever possible to get that going. And if other schools are interested in that, I know a few other schools do have allotment plots, but very happy to talk to people about that as well, about how to get the most out of an allotment plot. And is there one more slide, Lee?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just what we're doing at the moment. So obviously we can't go out at the moment and actually be with people on their grounds. So I am running a phone line. I mean, schools can call me at any time, but this is a publicly open phone line where people can ring up and ask for advice about growing or share stories. So we have the Leicester Food Growing Facebook page where people are, you know, there's been a massive upsurge in people joining that page since the crisis started. So we're really happy to hear about things that people are doing, just to share good news stories. And yeah, and by all means, ring me either on my usual number, which I think is most of you will have, or if you ring through on that advice line number, it comes through to my phone for any kind of help or advice or tips about gardening. I think that's about it.
Lovely. Thank you, Sam. Brilliant. So the other thing I'm just going to briefly mention is Enstruct, who are another organisation that are Leicester based. And what they do is lots of work with young people kind of across the city, working in different projects. So you give you a bit of an idea there. There's a link to their website, but I know they do quite a bit of work with secondary students, maybe students that are likely to be excluded, and alternative curriculums, but also they do a lot of forest school work with primary schools. So again, they're Leicester based. Probably a lot of people know about them, but I just thought I'd just mention them briefly if you're struggling for ideas or things to think about yourself. And then another big website that's worth looking at is Countryside Classroom. Amy, do you want to just briefly mention about that one?
Yeah, so it's got a host of resources about food, farming and the natural environment. And there's so much stuff on there. I had a good look through. It's also a good link to the healthy living topic. And they're doing lots of home education options at the moment as well.
Well, thank you. And then just briefly, in terms of curriculum links, I know that's one thing that a lot of people kind of have questions around about. Okay, if we take children outside, what else do we actually do when we get them outside? So the Leicester and Rutland Wildlife Trust produced a Wild About Learning pack a couple of years ago. And in this pack, there are links to Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 every year group. And it covers numeracy and literacy in all year groups. So this is a downloadable resource which you can get just on the website, which is just through this link here. And I know Martha was saying that she's put that up so you can download individual year groups, and it's something that you can use at home as well as in school. And I'm just going to play a little video that just explains that in a bit more detail. Just give it a second to know. There we go.
This is the pack that the Wildlife Trust wrote for teachers. It's an outdoor learning resource for literacy and numeracy, designed for primary school age children from year 1 to year 6. We viewed it when we were asked to write the pack as another tool for teachers to use. Lots of teachers were saying they were too busy to get outside to do their numeracy and literacy, and so we said to them, okay, we're not asking you to take your children outside to do something else. Why don't you take them outside to do your numeracy and your literacy?
Training sessions have been really, really good.
All right.
Strong belief in good CPD, and certainly these have helped the teachers to with some practical ideas of what they can do in using the outdoors as a classroom. I often talk about a teaching toolbox, which is the different strategies a teacher would use to engage with children, and some of the strategies that we've been hearing about for both English and maths are great, and it gives teachers that opportunity to take the learning outside of the classroom.
So for maths, we try and design the lessons so concepts may be learnt in the classroom are then taken outside and tried out and sort of problem solving. The literacy, we like to use the outdoor as a bit of a stage, so ever changing depending on the seasons and the environment. Children can come outside, they can find natural resources, collect things and kind of do some literacy outside.
I think all teachers should get involved, mainly because it is an experience that not every child gets. You get children that live in the city that never go to the park, they don't see any wildlife, they don't know what it is, and I think it would be a fantastic opportunity for them to do so.
Yeah. So some other very quick opportunities before we get to questions. We're currently recruiting for a 2-day-a-week environment officer for EcoSchools. So that'll be working with Amy and myself. So anyone who's maybe looking for a couple more days starting from the end of August with the new school year, do get in touch. The deadline for that's next Wednesday. We've also got a UN climate change learning course, which I think is really useful if people are looking for CPD opportunities. So again, the link's up on the PowerPoint that we'll put up online. And just to mention the off-school website, which is another Leicester developed tool, which has got lots of video links and things on, but it's kind of available nationwide. And then I've just put a few links in there about grant opportunities and things if people are looking for funding for some of these areas. So we're going to go on to questions. I'm conscious that it is nearly 11, but I do want to cover a few questions. So in the chat box, we had a few. So one was from Charlotte, which I think maybe is for you, Matthew. So insect homes and hotels. I've seen a lot of these in schools. Great idea, but rarely see any insects in them. Is there any evidence that they're actually effective, and if so, how?
The most recent thing I read was a critique of large insect homes, not the concept of them, but just the concept of having these big pallet mini-beast hotels that we often build and many other people often build, simply because they provide predators and prey in equal measure with homes, and that they can lead to actually some insects using them and actually then being destroyed by the predators. So, but the concept of using them, I couldn't point you at scientific literature, but I could point you at the one in my garden, which I was watching solitary bees emerging from 2 weeks ago. If they're in the right place, and probably bearing in mind what I was talking about, if you use different materials and different sightings for different types of insects, they work. And if they're not sighted in such a way that the kids are constantly rifling through them, which can be a problem in schools, that the kids are constantly moving the materials in a mini-beast hotel around, or taking them in and taking them out, because like anything else, if you disturb them too often, then the wildlife will just leave. But yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, if you were just to drill a few holes in a block of wood and put it in a south-facing on a south-facing wall, 1 meter to 2 meters up on the wall, you would probably see solitary bees using it quite quickly if there are also pollinator attracting plants in that area. So we have to think about the wider needs of the mini-bees. They obviously need shelter, they need food, they need all the kind of basic things that any animal needs. So yeah, I wouldn't give up on them. What I would do is create 2 or 3 different types of habitats. One that the kids can interact with, and that can be as simple as like a plank of wood on the ground that they can lift, or a log that they can roll. And you should find things like woodlice and centipedes and those kind of things under those, as long as they're on ground, on earth. If they're on tarmac or concrete, less will happen. And others where the kids don't disturb them, which are actually used to actually conserve and provide safe habitats for mini-beasts. But certainly, if you wander around any area where there are rotting logs or just piles of debris and root through them, you will see invertebrates in there.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Matthew. That's really helpful. More just a comment. So a couple that Margaret's put, and we'll make sure we put these into the PowerPoint for people. Opal is another lots of evidence of outdoor learning activity. So Opal opalexplorenature.org, and lots of citizen science surveys on that one. And then another one was mentioned. Urban Science is an EU public funded free at source project. So there's a module at the moment, Living Walls, with a focus on GCSE inquiry based learning. So Margaret's put a link there, so we'll make sure we put that in as well. And one called Grow Wild and in the Shade, also use school grounds, and lots of resources from the ASE to do with outdoor science. Lots of resources. I know the ASE at the moment have given open access to a lot of their journals and things at the moment. So the ASE is the Association for Science Education. Another sort of really good resource for primary and secondary, not just secondary teachers that do science for primary as well. So that's another kind of resource that's really useful if you're looking for ideas, particularly around the curriculum links. I know science does a lot of stuff already, but it's useful to have that structure, I guess. So I think that was all the questions in the chat box. Has anyone else got any sort of general questions? Now's your chance. By all means, either put in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself, and we'll try and see who shouts first. Oh, just silence. I was going to ask Matthew.
Hi, Lee.
Hello, go ahead.
I missed the last two team meets. Are they? Did you say they're available on the extranet?
Yeah. So if you go to, in fact, I'll put up the next slide there. So if you go to this web link, which is schools.leicester, there's a link at the top of the page. It just says webinars, and then that'll take you to the YouTube pages. They're basically uploaded to YouTube.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Lee.
No worries. You're welcome. Not a problem. Did Hannah shout as well then?
I did. It was just to say thank you very much, and that was really useful, and lots of places to go hunting now for stuff. So thank you.
That's all right, no worries. I think what we've found with this is the more that you sort of start putting these slides together, the more you find how much stuff is out there for each topic. And it's more about deciding and picking and choosing than kind of, I know kind of outside education, a lot of people are trying to make more and more resources, and actually it's more about being able to filter and pick the bits, I think. I've got a few nods there. I think people are agreeing there's lots of stuff. It's about picking what's most appropriate and using it with your children. Definitely. Excellent. Okay. So I'm just conscious it's just gone past 11. So thank you very much everyone for kind of attending today. As we've said, we'll put up the bits of information up on the chat box, up on the website. And our next webinar is on 13th of May, so that's next week, which will be all about waste and recycling. But again, if you can't get to them, we'll put these up on YouTube, and people can have a look at these afterwards. By all means, do share these links with staff at school, which I guess you can class as CPD as well. It's useful resources from there. Any final comments or questions for anyone? Thank you very much for all the positive comments on the chat box as well. Thank you. Any further comments?
Positive comments in on the chat box as well. If mine was working.
Yeah, I don't know why, Sarah. For some reason, yours comes up as a guest, and we're not quite sure why. So whether it's, I think, because quite a lot of schools use Teams, I think it gets confused depending on how it's signed in. But we'll look into that because we're obviously learning how to use Teams more and more ourselves.
Well, it says I've got to ask the team owner to make me a member. As you're the team owner, make me a member next time, please.
I will give it a go. I'll see how we can set that one up. No problem.
Thanks, Lee.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it, Charlotte. Yeah.
It was just, I was wondering how other schools are. So I'm a teaching assistant in a school, and I forwarded lots of links to the teachers saying, look, there's some great environmental education stuff you could put up for the kids to do at home, but it's not filtering. You know, I get a few like, oh, thanks, that's useful, but it's not getting to, like, I can see on the school website the work that they're being set, and they're not putting up, they're putting the real basics up. They're just putting my maths and as a literacy thing, and not putting any of the kind of environmental education links that I would love them to put up. How are other people managing to get this stuff to the kids? Yeah, that was my question. It doesn't have to be answered now, but maybe in future ones, because I know we're out of time now. But
I can say a couple of sentences. At our school, we're doing a maths and an English, and then we're going for a global goals is sort of the third area, and we're trying to encourage them to do projects as a whole family. We've got quite a lot of big families at school, so our global goals work for the last couple of weeks has been on life on land. So that we're just setting maths, English, global goals, and well-being are the sort of 4 strands that we're working on.
And are you like a head teacher, or?
I'm deputy head at Mayflower Primary School.
Okay. So if I said so
if you went on our school website, at the front page, the landing page of the school website, mayflower.j2webby.com, each year group is there. If you click on the year group, all the work's there put on a Padlet, and you could kind of have a look and see what it looks like.
So you kind of dictated to the teachers, you need to set some literacy, some maths, and a global goal for.
I've got all of our teachers. All our teachers who are not allowed to come in, the ones who are off for 12 weeks, they're our home learning team. So we have regular meetings with them, and we decide as a team how it's going to work. And we think for our community, having that kind of project around a global goal is a good way forward for them.
Yeah, great. Okay, that's really useful. Thanks.
Thanks.
No worries. The other one, Charlotte, might be the EcoSchools at Home is quite a nice double-sided sheet that gives lots of activities. It might be maybe having a chat with SLT about maybe using one of them as a trial, because they're all designed for something to do at home. It's quite a nice contained sheet, and it might be, they're quite nice to sort of share with students.
There's millions of ideas. It's more kind of how do I get the teachers to actually put it up is more because I don't have control.
We'll put something on our Twitter as well. We'll ask a few questions, see if we can get any other ideas.
But great.
Lovely, no worries. Thank you. Brilliant. Well, we'll leave people to hopefully a sunny day for the rest of today. I understand the bank holiday's been sunny, so someone sent us some good news. If you haven't already, that's all our contacts for our various social media. And if you don't sign up for the newsletter already, by all means, just add yourself to that. But that's kind of the end for today. So thank you very much, everyone. And we'll hopefully see you next week. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. That was much appreciated.
Oh, I think he's gone.
Yeah, isn't it? Can you do that? Can you do that and leave us here stranded?
Yeah.
You okay, Sam?
Yes. How are you doing, Matthew? How's things?
Yeah, fine. Sounds like you're keeping busy with the garden line,
Yeah, trying to. Yeah, I've been growing plants at home as well. So if anyone wants any spare plants, I've got